Well, hello, everyone. This is Zach Brooks from World Transplant Athletes. If you have a body with a new part, you are a World Transplant Athlete. You can follow us at worldtransplantathletes.org, World Transplant Athletes on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and your social media platform of choice. We have a team of 20 organ recipients from 11 countries and 6 languages working behind the scenes to make content for you. Today, we're doing a podcast called Friends of World Transplant Athletes to celebrate and support groups anywhere and everywhere that are either led by transplant recipients or have recipients as their primary focus. Today, we're talking to Sharron Rouse. Yes, Rouse House, yes, from Kindness for Kidneys. Did I get it right this time? Did it was a little bit better?
You sure did, Zach.
Oh,
Thank you so
oh,
much.
good. I'm so proud of myself. That was my big task for the day. So, let me just share a little bit about her fantastic group. Kindness for is dedicated to raising awareness and public health education of kidney disease. Their mission is to educate, encourage, and empower kidney warriors and their families. So, what a cool mission! So good to have you on the show. So, tell us a little bit about you, your name, and where you're from in this world.
Sure, sure. So before I begin, Zach, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story and to share what we do at Kindness for Kidneys, and just also to congratulate the World Transplant Athletes on the amazing job that you're doing, impacting the world and inspiring and empowering people to live their best lives. I truly admire all the work that you're doing, and I'm hoping to be more athletic in the future as well. So I'm even more inspired that way. So my name is Sharron Rouse, and I am the proud founder of Kindness for Kidneys International. And I was born and raised here in the Washington, D.C. area. So we're about, I would say from downtown D.C., I'm about 20 minutes away, 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the traffic. Some days it could be an hour, but about 20 to 30 minutes. And so where we live, I'm in the southern part of Maryland, and we are situated where I can get to D.C. and Maryland. I can get to DC and Virginia, in about 5 minutes. So southern end, south of DC, about 20 to 30 minutes
Yeah,
away.
so if you haven't been to the DC area on the East Coast of the United States, it's like putting 3 strains of spaghetti together and throwing it on a wall and it twists. Like they're all kind of interfolded together, especially kind of right where there are a couple of rivers together. So it's a pretty cool spot where you're from. So it's probably obvious, but which transplant did you have?
A kidney transplant. Thanks to my sister, Shantae, December 2nd, 2013.
Thank you, Shantae. So maybe you can take 2 minutes and walk people through your particular journey. Like how did you find out that you had something that eventually led to a kidney transplant?
Sure. So I was a school counselor at the time that it happened, but I gotten up to go to work one day and my legs were swollen. And so I didn't really, think anything of it other than I work in a school system. So I'm walking around all day and maybe this is just the result of it. And I was a
Yeah.
new mom. My daughter was 5 months old. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm tired. My legs are swollen. I'm back to work. And so this is a result of it. But when I got there, I just mentioned it to our school nurse just to see if he could kind of give me an idea of what was going on. And he told me to go to the emergency room right away.
Mm.
And so from that, based on having 2 biopsies, they determined that this was FSGS kidney disease, and it stands for focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. And it's where a part of your kidney cells become scarred. So it's like parts of parts. So segments become scarred in your kidneys, and it makes it hard to filter waste and for your kidneys to perform and function the way that they were designed to function. And so I will back up to say that initially they thought that it was lupus related. The doctors felt that I had received a lupus diagnosis in 2003, and they said, "Well, you just had a child, you just had a baby, so sometimes your body will respond to giving birth and things like that because that's considered a major event." And so we think that this is lupus related. I will say I never really felt that I had lupus. Even through the diagnosis of it and everything, I had a
Mhm.
little bit of swelling and fatigue, but I just felt like, I don't know. And so when we got this FSGS diagnosis, I felt like maybe this is what was going on all along.
Mhm.
And many times the symptoms mirror each other, and this is what it's been, and it's just showing up now. And as you know, kidney disease it can be silent and lay dormant for years before you actually know that you have it. And so this here what I was in 2006, a new mom,
Yeah.
5 month old baby, and I'm calling my husband from the emergency room saying they're telling me my kidneys are failing.
Wow. I mean, what's fascinating about the story, at least two things that stand out. One is that, and I've talked to a lot of people, there oftentimes they have another explanation for what's going on. It's completely plausible. Like, oh, you're a new mom. Well, of course your body is undergoing all sorts of changes afterwards. So why wouldn't it be that? So there's a lot of blind spots that we just have. So it's actually hard to get to that point of really finding out. But also there's kind of an acute nature to that story that suddenly your legs were swelling. So you do think the kidneys eventually just got to that point where it presented like that? Is that kind of what you think in
Yes,
retrospect?
yes, yes. And I thought, because I had been diagnosed with lupus, I thought, well, maybe this has something to do with the lupus, even though my legs had never been swollen like that before. So I
Sure.
thought maybe, I wasn't really sure. I felt okay. I was tired, but I thought, I mean, I have a 5 month old, so who wouldn't be tired?
You're supposed to be tired. Yeah.
Exactly. So I didn't really, I never thought kidney disease ever.
So, yeah. So did you get your transplant right away? Because this was 2006, you said. So when did you get your transplant? What was the part that led up to eventually getting your transplant?
Sure. So I was able to they were able to keep my kidneys at bay with medication, immunosuppressant medication, and steroids. So they were able to get the numbers back down to a reasonable um
Okay.
number that I
Yeah.
didn't have to start dialysis or anything like that. But in 2011, they began
Oh,
to
wow.
decline.
So
Yes.
5 years you had
Yes.
medications and these kind of things that were keeping you going.
Yes, and by the time 2011 hit, I wasn't even on medication. They were down so far that they felt like, "You're doing fine. We just have to keep monitoring your kidneys to make sure that they are not declining." But in 2011, they started to decline,
Okay.
and I found myself having the conversation with my nephrologist about going on dialysis.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So what was that process like? And certainly finding out is a incredible moment, but getting into the world of dialysis, what was that like for
Oh
you?
man, it was hard. I would say it was difficult.
Okay.
I was in denial for a while, and my doctor would set up appointments because and I will say my doctor was very proactive, and which I really appreciated. My nephrologist was very proactive, and he said, you're working full time. Let's get you started with peritoneal dialysis. Let's at least get the operation. And so
Mhm.
if your kidneys continue to go in the direction that they are, we can get you started right away. But because I was in denial, I didn't go to the appointments. I skipped
Yeah.
out on going to the surgery the day that they had it scheduled. I just felt that I wanted to try some other natural ways to heal
Yeah.
my kidneys. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not doing dialysis. No. And so I always tell people you do experience the grieving process when you get a diagnosis like kidney disease, and or when you're told, hey, you're going to have to start dialysis. And I think that's where I was until I came to a place of acceptance. And by the time I came to this acceptance, it was really too late to do the peritoneal route. They needed to start me on dialysis right away. And so that
Yeah.
happened in June of 2012. I had to get the permacath in, the CVC catheter, because it was an emergency at that point. My kidneys had declined pretty rapidly. And I had to get the CVC catheter to start dialysis immediately.
Okay. So then you had to go to a center or what
Yes,
happened?
I did hemodialysis for about a year because so I had the permacath in, but shortly after I started dialysis, we found out my sister was a match.
Oh,
And
okay.
so after we went through a lot to get to the transplant table, and we were denied in the beginning. I would say we were denied about 2 or 3 times because they were questioning my sister's hemoglobin levels.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, yeah, so we were denied a couple of times until we finally made it to the transplant table. So in between that time, because the wait was getting longer and longer, even though we knew she was a match, the wait was becoming longer and longer because we were constantly going back and forth about what we were going to do. She ended up having 2 bone marrow biopsies to be able to prove that she was a viable candidate.
Wow.
She was determined. I had to give it to her because after the first bone marrow biopsy, I was like, don't worry about it. I'm on the list. I'm going to get a call. No worries, you know. And she was determined. She has her own story as to why she was, and she was going through some life challenges and felt that this was her purpose. But yeah, she was determined. And so she said, no, I'm going to show them that my blood is okay and I can do this. And as a result, she ended up doing having to get the bone marrow biopsies. And then I ended up switching to peritoneal dialysis because of the wait time and the fact that I was working full time.
Hmm.
And I just felt like I would say hemodialysis was a little hard on my body. And so I felt like, let me try peritoneal and see if this makes it a little better. And it did. It did. I did do a lot better on peritoneal dialysis. So shortly before we got the transplant, I transitioned to peritoneal dialysis. And then on December 2nd of 2018, 2013, we finally made it to the transplant table.
Hmm.
And we were a 6 antigen match. And so, you know, they do the matching
Hmm.
and to see how well your kidneys are matching up, and all 6 antigens matched up perfectly.
Wow, that's incredible. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the organization and some of the inspiration for the organization now, because this is, the heart of the podcast, really to celebrate you and your good work with Kindness for Kidneys.
Thank you. So yes, I love talking about kindness for kidneys,
Okay.
and I'm well aware that it's so much bigger than me. I'm just the hands and the feet and the vision behind it, but it's so much bigger than me, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to work with so many wonderful people. So we launched on December 2nd of 2018. It was my 5-year kidney anniversary, and what better way to launch a vision that God had laid on my heart when I was on dialysis.
Hmm.
And I didn't really know how it was all going to come to fruition. I really didn't have a clear cut path of how this was going to look. I just knew I wanted to give back based on my experiences. And so the day I walked into a dialysis facility, my life was transformed. I couldn't
Hmm.
believe what I saw. I couldn't believe that especially in communities of color, I couldn't believe we weren't having conversations, but yet we were disproportionately impacted.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to do something to change that narrative, to change the narrative surrounding kidney disease around the world, but specifically for underserved and communities of color.
Hmm.
And so that's where Kindness for Kidneys was formed. And it was my desire to educate and to encourage and empower anyone that was impacted by kidney disease, and more importantly, educate the community and the world at large, because we kidney disease it tends to be forgotten. We don't
Yeah.
hear about it until, and you really don't talk about it even until your family is impacted by it.
Yeah. So one of the things that stood out, so we ended up doing kind of a rehearsal for this before. So we've had a conversation before the live version that when you shared earlier is that when you walked into the center for the first time, you had a lot of shock, which is very normal. You're entering this incredible chapter of your own healthcare journey. But then you had this clear, stark sort of sensation. Like there's a lot of people of color in this dialysis center. That was actually my experience too. But in your case, you're thinking to yourself, um, why haven't I heard about this before? And so there was this sort of weird insight that you kind of started to develop really quickly. Is that right? Kind of once you walked into the center?
Absolutely. I couldn't believe it. I was like, why did I know what was going on in here? You know?
Hmm.
And if we're disproportionately impacted, why aren't we having conversations, about it? Why,
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't talk about it. And even people that have loved ones that go to dialysis, they'll say, well, I just dropped them off. I didn't know what was going on in there. And so I felt like that's a problem because what if this is hereditary for your family? Or what if, and instead of us repeating the same cycle, let's talk about it and be educated to and be proactive in our healthcare so that we can prevent future generations from having to experience this over and over and over again.
Let's see what's going on here.
I
We got a
think you're
little
back.
disconnected. Yeah, there's some Wi-Fi stuff, it looks like. We're back live. So maybe back up a little bit here. Like the last thing that I recall before I think my Wi-Fi was a little iffy. Um, the of having conversations change any dynamics at all, especially if you have family members, one generation after the other, who end up in dialysis centers.
Yes. And that's what I felt like, if you're not sharing with your loved one, or if your loved one has no clue as to what's going on, how are you going to change your generations to follow? Or are you just going to start this cycle over and over again? And each
Mm-hmm.
person is starting afresh, not really having the background knowledge, knowing that their family member experienced it, but that's about it. Many times caregivers say, "Oh, I just dropped them off. I didn't know what was actually going on in there. I just dropped them off," And I said, "Well, that's an issue because in most cases, they're the caregiver, and if the caregiver is oblivious, then how are we supporting each other?
Yeah, I mean, it's really such a wonderful story of the power of just opening your mouth, the power of conversation, because it can start to trickle and move people in different behavioral directions. And if you have a sense that something might be coming down the line because of your relatives, maybe you can have a different outcome. But it starts with just some awareness and finally a little bit of action of like, wait a minute, let's talk. That's what
Absolutely.
really stands out about that particular story for me, in your case. So there's three pillars. I think I mentioned it at the start of the show of your group, and talk about each of those and why they're so important for what you guys are doing.
Sure. So our three pillars are education, encouragement, and empowerment. And as an advocate, everyone should be an advocate for themselves. Let's just, kind of get that straight. You should be an advocate for yourself and be an active participant in your healthcare. But in order to do that, you have to be educated and know and understand what you're going through and how you can be a participant in your healthcare. So education is at the forefront of what we do, not just for people that are impacted by kidney disease, but also for the
Mm,
community at large.
yeah.
I always say it's going to take a village to change the narrative surrounding kidney disease. But if the village isn't aware of kidney disease, then how are we going to expect them to be a part of the change? And so um, education is at the forefront of what we do, educating people on how to take care of themselves, what signs to look for kidney disease, asking what questions to go to your doctor to ask about, and
Hmm.
even how you can advocate for yourself. That has to be key because I know for myself, I learned early on that if I didn't advocate for myself, I couldn't expect anyone else to. And so, in order for my doctor and I to work effectively together, I have to be an active participant and be aware of what's going on. I
Hmm.
remember, and I'll just give this very briefly, being in the
Yeah.
hospital and the nurse asking me why I was taking heparin. And I didn't know. And nurses had been coming in night after
Wow.
night to give me a needle in my stomach. And not once did I ask, what is this? And why am I taking it? And so that day changed my life because I said, oh my goodness, I'm taking this stuff. I have no clue what's going on. And a lot of times the misconception is, well, I'm in a hospital, they're trained, they should know what they're doing, I don't have to worry about it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You should be an active participant, you should ask questions. I should have known why I was taking heparin and what the side effects could possibly be, and what the goal was for me taking this. And
Yeah.
so that night I decided, oh no, I will be asking questions from now on. And so part of that is encouraging warriors to do the same.
Hmm.
That takes
Yeah.
us to
And
the encouragement pillar. It's like being encouraging people to be active and to be an active participant in their healthcare, no matter if it's kidney disease or not, but just being active in what's going on in your life because you are your biggest advocate.
yeah, to just like really emphasize how important it is, and just to anyone who's watching who maybe is going through the journey before transplantation or cancer or something else. it's one of the hardest things to do, but really important. Like when you're feeling extremely sick and tired going through your healthcare journey, you really have to force yourself to ask a question and find some empowerment that you didn't know you have. You certainly have it in you, but you might not feel that way. But the more active you are in directly active you are in asking questions of nurses, doctors, everyone, the better your outcomes will be. That's just some insight that you can only develop going through the process that Sharron has developed. Me too, unfortunately. So if you can gain that knowledge, beforehand, then we're both doing something worthwhile, and in the future, you can share some insight into future transplant recipients. So it makes sense that education would be one pillar, but talk about the other pillars that are part of Kindness for Kidneys mission and work that you guys are doing.
Sure. So encouragement and empowerment. And I think I kind of mentioned encouragement a little bit, but sometimes you need that push, you need that community connection in
Mm-hmm.
order to feel confident to even start to advocate for yourself. And so if I feel that I'm not informed enough or I don't have what it takes to advocate for myself, I can gain some of that strength by connecting with community. And so we encourage kidney warriors to do that. We encourage family members, caregivers especially. I have a huge heart for caregivers because I feel like many times they probably experience the journey harder at a harder way in a harder way than we do. Yes, we're the patient and the attention is on us, but many times it's the caregivers in the background that are trying to help us eat healthy, that are trying to get us to appointments that, many times feel helpless and many times they're forgotten and they have no clue of how to support their loved one. So that's where our encouragement comes in. We have an education program going on now for both patients and caregivers.
Oh, wow.
And for that specific reason that, as a caregiver, I should be just as informed as the patient because I'm responsible for their care and
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that they're getting to their appointments, ensuring that the medications that they're taking, I'm able to speak on why they're taking it and even know which medications they're taking. And so, the encouragement piece is really encouraging warriors. As you know, many people experience bouts of depression and
Yeah.
anxiety when they're dealing with kidney disease. And so being that sense of support and that safe space for families is what we want to do through encouragement. And then
Yeah.
empowerment, just giving families the tools. And I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. You get the education and the encouragement, empowerment is soon to come. And so we want
Mm.
families to be
Yeah.
empowered to be a part of their own rescue. I say participate in your own rescue.
Oh,
You know
okay.
your body, and combining that with the healthcare providers' expertise, we should be able to come up with the best solution for you and your loved one.
Yeah.
And so that's where empowerment comes in. When you're empowered to be a part of your own journey, anything can happen, and not just for you, but for generations to come. I know for me, I said I vowed when I was sitting in the dialysis chair that God forbid if anyone in my family has to come behind me and sit in this chair, I'm going to be in a position to really help. I'm going to be able to encourage and empower them based on what I'm doing here.
Yeah. I can't think of a better way to end this really cool conversation, but maybe you could just share how people can get in touch with you and your group if they have any questions. But yeah, incredible way to end the conversation, really trying to empower and help the next generation avoid some of the same things that you went through.
Yes, absolutely. So we can be found on www.kindnessforkidneys.org. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn as Kindness for Kidneys. So feel free to look us up. We'd love to connect with you. And again, thank you so much, Zach. I was going to call you Brooks. Oh my
That's
goodness. Thank
okay.
you so much, Zach, for this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.